To get started, I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to kind of introduce themselves on our panel today.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Nick, for breakfast. It looks amazing. I want to say thank you to all my realtors for coming and being so supportive, and for Charlotte for not sleeping last night, and Paulina for always just being great. I'm Peggy Hill, and I am here today to talk about home ownership, mostly because all my wealth is in real estate.
Hey everyone, good morning. My name is Nick Laquier. I own a company called Mortgage Wellness. I just want to say thanks to the team for having me here today. Really incredible event. So thanks to everyone that took time of your busy day to be here. Really excited to share with you, sort of everything that's happening in the industry, in the market, about mortgages. We've collectively helped thousands of people with this plan. So really excited to share that info with you.
Hey, good morning. It's Glenn Dills with Amerispec Inspection Services. Excited to be here, and thank you for everybody trying out early Sunday morning. We'll be talking about what to expect with an inspection, what to look for.
Good morning. I'm Sharon Clute from Sharon Clute Insurance Agency, Desjardins. We do home insurance, auto insurance, life insurance, business insurance. We do the gamut. I'm at 431 Huronia Road, just down the street from the Peggy Hill office. I have a team of licensed insurance professionals, and we've been servicing Barrie and surrounding area for 20 years now.
Good morning. My name is Mark Greer. I'm the owner of HMH Law Offices. HMH has been serving clients in Barrie, Simcoe County, all of Ontario for over 50 years. From the same location at 39 Elm Street. I started there about 8 years ago, and earlier this year acquired full ownership of the firm. We primarily deal in real estate, transactions, mortgages, purchases, sales, also wills and estate planning, corporate commercial, and a small bit of family law as necessary.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming out. First, we're just going to give you a lay of the land. So kind of the agenda for what this whole session will look like. So first we'll start off with Peggy. Peggy will give you her advice on where to kind of start your home buying journey. Then obviously a huge barrier for most people looking to buy their first home is how to finance a home. So Nick will kind of give you all of the best tips he has on how a first-time buyer can get into the market. Glenn will cover home inspections and how important they are when you're buying your first home, what to look out for. Sharon will cover home insurance, and then Mark will cover all of the legal aspects of buying a home. At the end, we'll go into frequently asked questions, because I think that a lot of first-time buyers have similar questions that we hear all the time. We have some questions that we'll cover there, and then we'll also open it up to the audience. So if any of you guys have questions as we're going through, we're happy to answer them. And then at the end, we'll cover what's next. So on each of your tables, we have a little card that shows you the open houses that we're hosting after this. Inside your bag, there's a folder where we've covered payment structures for all of the houses that we're going to be doing open houses at today. So you can open up your folder, see what payments actually look like on the houses that we're going to be touring. The QR code on that card on your table actually opens a Google map that shows you all the houses that are on that sheet. So just keep that in mind and make sure you scan that code so that you have the map at the end if you wanted to tour any of the homes. So we'll start off with Peggy.
I think that the proper steps, as Charlotte has pointed them out here, are understanding your budget. That's important. And even when you buy a home, like it's going to feel tight. It's no word of a lie. But sometimes you have to feel that in order to grow in life. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be a little strapped, not to be able to go on vacation every year. Like, it's just the way it is. Like, it's just the way it is. She's given him rolly eyes because I think she's talked to him about this before. She's right, just so you know. Life is not a picnic, man, but like you can't even, how are you ever going to know the good times if you don't go through some crappy ones first? But back to my slides, sorry. So knowing your budget and knowing what you can afford is very important, but also knowing what you can do with that budget. Like, that's the other great thing. There's so many ways to homeownership now. Like, there's not just your typical, oh, I'm buying this detached house. No, you can buy one that's a duplex. You can buy one that has leased land. And back in the day when we were selling leased land properties, they were all at Sandy Cove and they were all like a million years old. And you had to be 50 or 80 or whatever to get into them. Now, like, you can buy beautiful leased properties and you don't own the land, granted. However, it's home ownership. You own that home. You have to find the right person that's going to be very raw and real and honest with you. And that's as invested in your journey, if not more than you are. Because you know if somebody's invested in your journey just by the advice they're going to give you about how quickly they're going to rush you along with the process, about how many resources they're going to reach out to you. And I mean, this is a big one for me, defining your needs. You don't have any needs. Put needs out. There's no needs. Just buy a damn house. I don't even care what it is. It doesn't even matter. You got to start somewhere. And I think the part that stops people, see why she cringes? Part of what stops people is they're looking for this perfection or this dream that they had in their head. You can make your dreams come true. You can make them come true. But if you don't start somewhere, you're never going to get anywhere because the world's not built that way. You're so cute, TJ. So that's the one that bothers me a lot is defining your needs, because I hear people all the time, oh, I don't want to buy a condo, I want a detached. And it's like, can you afford a detached? No. Buy a fucking condo. First F-bomb, pretty good. It's been 20 minutes. 11:16. It is Sunday. True. Okay. And so after you got your budget, you found the right person to work with, you defined what you actually is really important. And what's really important in real estate is location. That's really important. Don't buy on the highway. I mean, yeah. You buy the best that you can afford in the best area you can afford it in. Oh, she agrees. And really, then the fun begins. You start looking, and for some people, this process is like, I don't know, a week. For some people, it's a year. For some people, it's 2 years. You can ask my realtors how long they've been working with people, and it's never our timeline. It's yours. And when you have the right home, you'll know, even if it doesn't have all the frilly things that you thought you needed. So I touched on this earlier, and Nick will go into it in great detail, but there are assistants out there. The Simcoe County Down Payment Assistance Program is one of my favorite, because they will give you up to $70,000 in a forgivable loan. That's your down payment. Like, they're giving you the down payment. There's no catches. Well, there are a couple. You have to stay there. You can't sell it, or you can sell it.
You just have to repay it.
You have to repay it.
1 year.
And then there's your RSPs. You can deduct from your RSPs. Lots of people have a first-time savings account. We never had those either. So Nick will touch on those. But my point in this was just to let you know that we never had these things. We never had any of this stuff before. So you have them now. Take advantage of them. The other pet peeve I have that I want to tell you guys is this. Everybody has an issue with these 30-year amortizations. I hear nothing but negative stuff about it. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, because I don't care if it takes 25 or 30 years. The longest term in a mortgage in this country is 5 years. That's it. So you're stuck with this mortgage for 5 years. After 5 years, you got a better job. You're making more money. You're well established. Your equity's gone up. There are so many things that can help you reduce that timeline. But what a lot of you don't understand is that when we go see a client, we'll sell them a home. We'll walk in there 10 years later, and guess what? They're pushing for this price that they want for this house, and I'm scratching my head, and it's like, why? And then I realized that they've been refinancing all along. So they have used their home like an ATM, because that's what people do. So this 30-year, most people will have a mortgage for 50 years. Even people that bought 10 years ago.
Peggy, sorry, maybe some of us don't know what amortization means.
So the government has this plan for first-time buyers. And you can buy any home you want, and you can put out the payments for 30 years. So typically it was 25. Now they stretched it out to 30. The reason for that is that home prices have gone up. It's irrelevant. is completely irrelevant. But I hear people saying, "Oh, my dad says it's a ripoff because you know how much more interest I'm going to pay," and it's like, no, you're going to pay interest for 5 years, and then you're going to renew this. And at that point, you can renew it for 15 years. It depends what position you're in life, where you want to go with this. So don't listen to the naysayers. And I think that's a lot of the problem right now. Everybody has an opinion and they're happy to share it with you, even me. But try and just block out the noise and just feel what's important to you and what you need to do to get. So as I was saying before, there are affordable detached homes. There are townhomes. There are condos. All three things have great opportunities. Land leased homes. There's a builder in Innisfil that's building the most beautiful properties. I was dumbfounded when I walked in. I was in our open house tour. And I didn't read the slides. So duplex and multi-unit homes. That's kind of my personal favorite. You can live in the basement while other people live on the first floor of your home. But guess what? Those suckers are sending money down every single month. So don't get preconceived notions of what it looks like to live in your home. You could be in the basement. If the people upstairs want to pay you more than you're making down there, let them do it for a few years. At any given point, if you want to move upstairs to your own home, you can. With proper notice, they got to go. So don't let, negative things or the idea of somebody living in your house. Who cares? It's a way to get in. And Simcoe County has a lot of great places. So Barrie's not your most expensive place. In fact, townhouses right now in Aurelia are actually more expensive than the townhouses in Barrie. So again, I think you need the right people to talk to get just to wrap your head around what all this looks like. Innisfil has notoriously always been more expensive, and that's because it's just further south, right? Anytime you're going further south, that's where it is. But Midland has great options. There's tons of great options. And my tips. I think I gave you all my tips because I talk a lot. Oh, well, I kind of did so that's why fixer-uppers are great because you get to make them what you want. It's hard to go into a decent home that has decent flooring and rip it up and put down new flooring because you wanted a specific flooring. It's a lot easier to take a shitty floor and put new flooring on it. You feel better about it. So don't judge a book by its cover. If the bones are good and you have a home inspection and the bones are good, don't worry about the fact that it's not as pretty as you would have thought. We know that when we list a home, the prettier it is, the more money our clients are going to get. And it doesn't matter if it's smaller than the house or it's smaller than the other house that got less money. It was prettier. People paid for pretty. Well, let them pay you for that pretty when you're done with that house. Don't pay for it going into it. And that's it.
All right, it's my turn. Can I grab the clicker? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, let's just see if it works. It works. Great. So those people that say I hate doing this, I hate talking in front of people. That's not me. So ask away. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything. My name's Nick Lequier. I'm a mortgage broker. I own a company called Mortgage Wellness. We help about 600 or 700 people a year get into homeownership, renegotiate their mortgage, invest in real estate, that sort of thing. So the reason I tell you that is to get to 600 or 700 people in a year, we talk to 3,000 or 4,000 people in a year. If you ever want to know what's really happening in the streets, like the questions that are being asked, just give me a call. For the last 2 or 3 years, that was homeowners saying, I'm having a hard time paying my mortgage. We have to pull our kids out of swimming lessons because of high rates, all of those things. That's a really sad story. But one of the other really sad stories that I hear consistently, which will sort of relate to the people in this room, is something like this. My wife and I are both 40. We just had our first child. We both make a great income. We both have great credit, and we still rent because we haven't saved up our down payment. and their only barrier to entry is $40,000 or $50,000, and that down payment that's prohibiting them from getting into the market. They're watching their friends buy homes. They're watching their friends earn $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in equity, and then refinance, wipe out their debt, buy nicer cars, go on vacations, buy a second home, buy a cottage, buy a ski chalet, rent those out, sell all those, cash in, and do it all over again. And the only thing that got them there in the first place was the $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 to get into the market. That is hands down the saddest story in the mortgage business today. So I'm going to show you how to overcome those barriers. We've literally helped thousands of people do it. And, sort of the epicenter of this event was just coming to that crossroads and really realizing that so many people are affected by this and just don't know that there's a very easy solution to it. So I'll give you a guess. What is the most talked about thing in the mortgage business right now? Interest rates. So let's think back to 2020 when rates started with a 1 or a 2. And those rates were uneven. They caused homes to be incredibly affordable. The end of those interest rates is what caused my beard to be more gray. But they were great times. And what's really interesting about 2020 and 2021 is that it was proven that Canadians would rather pay more for their home, provided they're getting a lower interest rate. Just think about that for a sec. South Barrie homes were $1.2 million as long as you could get a 2% interest rate. Same homes today, $900,000, $950,000. All the experts at the back of the room are doing this, right? $300,000 less, but I ain't paying 5% for that interest rate. Okay, so as things are changing in our world quickly, tariffs, Trump, elections, all of these things, they push interest rates down, not up. Our phones ring off the hook right now with people saying, I want to lock in or get a mortgage before rates go up with all this craziness, okay? Let's think back to 2020 and 2021. Global crisis. Half the workforce, more than half the workforce, 80% of the workforce lost their job or were temporarily laid off. 1% interest rates. They do this as a mechanism to create optimism, consumer confidence. That's the buzzword in the media, okay? So right now, these rates are really, really great. The lowest that we've seen in like 2.5 years. A first-time homebuyer can now secure a 3-year fixed-rate mortgage for about 3.87%. You can expect that to go down. But what's really important is that these rates are considerably less if you're a first-time homebuyer because you're paying CMHC insurance. You see, the only way to buy a home with less than 20% down is to pay CMHC insurance. It's added to the mortgage. I'm going to show you how it works in a moment. Your folks are selling their home. Let's say they're selling their first home that they've been in for 10 years, and they're cashing out on $300,000 or $400,000 of equity. When they go to get their next mortgage, they're going to pay about 0.5% more for their mortgage than you will, coming in with your minimum down payment. So I'm going to show you how that works. But these really low interest rates produce really low payments in an environment where home prices still have not appreciated. So is there an incredible opportunity? Yes, there is. Absolutely. A year ago, people were like, is it a great time to buy a home? And we would say, generally, yes, because home prices were down. People at that time were taking low short-term interest rates. They'd say, I know rates are high, but I only want to take it for 2 or 3 years because we know when we renew, they're going to be lower. There's been a really interesting change in the mortgage business in the last few months. The 3-year rate is now lower than the 5-year rate. Low home price that hasn't appreciated, decreasing interest rates, short-term rates that are really safe, stable, and secure for the foreseeable future. Chances are when you renew, you can renegotiate, get a lower rate. So when we talk about rates, there's fixed and there's variable rates. I would hazard a guess that 99% of the people in this audience, if you're buying your first home, would take a fixed interest rate. Predictable payment, fixed interest rate, safe, stable, secure. Every single phone call starts with, what about the variable rate? Well, the variable rate is set to go down. Now, if you know somebody that's had a variable rate in the last 3 years, it's gone through the roof. These are the people that experienced their payments doubling. Oh, yeah. And yeah, in the last 2 years, 3 years, your payments have literally doubled. These people have felt the pain, okay? If you know somebody, work with somebody, live with somebody that has had one of these mortgages, You don't want anything to do with it. The only reason people are asking about them now is, as you can see, rates are expected to go down. So they want to take advantage of those decreases. A great strategy potentially as a first-time homebuyer is to take the variable rate, wait for it to go down, and then lock into a fixed rate. Okay, so we won't talk too much about that. I would say, honestly, 9 in 10 first-time homebuyers are better suited for a fixed rate. And the great news is they're down right now. So remember when I said that first-time homebuyers get the best interest rates? That's because they pay CMHC insurance. So if you have less than 20% down, you're going to have an insurance premium added to your mortgage. It's not paid out of pocket. It's added to the mortgage. So Charlotte and I were having a great conversation this morning, and she said, one of the questions that she got was, what about the cost? Like, you said that the rate's lower. Does it make more sense? Like, does it pay itself off, right? Is the rate that much lower that if I add $20,000 to my mortgage, like, am I going to come out ahead? And my simple answer that I know everybody at the back of the room is going to agree with for sure is this. Buy a home today with 5% down, pay the $20,000 in CMHC insurance, come back to me in 5 years and I'll show you that you've made $100,000 or $200,000 or $250,000 on that home. You 10x'd the cost of the mortgage insurance for sure, right? Now, there's exceptions to the rule, right? Home values have gone down in the last few years, but we're still, if I'm not mistaken, Peggy, above 2019 levels.
It was 2021.
There you go, right? So the people that really felt it were buying in the height of the market. But if we're talking about the cost, this cost allows you to get into the home. Let me show you an example. So this is a $500,000 home. And you may be thinking, like, where am I going to find a $500,000 home? The team at the back of the room will show you how to buy a $500,000 home. They exist all over Midland, Aurelia, like the peripheries of Simcoe County. They will find one for you for sure. So this is a $500,000 purchase price minus $25,000 down. That's your 5% down payment. Plus your CMHC insurance. So you see how it's added. It's not out of pocket. That produces a monthly payment with property taxes, $2,600 a month. I see everybody doing like this. They're like, that's doable, right? Everybody knows it's doable. But how do you get in without the down payment? I'm going to show you how to do that as well, okay? But first, I'm going to jump back to that 30-year amortization comment that Peggy was talking about. So when you think amortization, think life of the mortgage, okay? But it doesn't mean that it's forever, Dad. You're not married to that 30-year amortization. You get a 2-year, a 3-year, or a 5-year fixed interest rate, for example. And when that term comes up for renewal, you renegotiate. If you take the 30-year amortization to start, that's just how long your payments are spread over. It just makes it more affordable. And I can tell you something, everything changes in your life every 5 years anyways. Everything. At my stage of life, I have a 14-year-old turning 15 and a 12-year-old. The 12-year-old has a bubble bath in my room every day and sleeps in my bed, tells me how much she loves me at night. My 14-year-old, I haven't seen her in 6 months because she just lives upstairs in her bedroom, right? So like everything changes so quickly. I'm looking at the baby in the back of the room too, right? Because like that feels like yesterday. So you plan for the next 3 to 5 years. That is it. That is it. And when Peggy says you buy the house that you can afford today, that is what you do. You buy the house that you can afford today, the best house you can afford today. We call that the jump house. It's not perfect, but you buy it. You jump to the next house. Period. How many houses did your daughter have to own before buying her dream home? 3, 4. That was her 4th house, right? Yeah. So you don't buy your dream home the first time. What you do is you take the most affordable payment that you can get on that first house. Make it as affordable as possible. Some people will say, what's the minimum down payment? It's $30,000. Great. I have $45,000 available. Like, great. Don't put it down. Keep the $15,000 in your bank. Put the $15,000 into the flooring. The flooring will increase the value of the home more than the benefit of putting an extra $15,000 down on the mortgage, for example. So the 30-year amortization that was just introduced in December, this is huge. There's been like 150 changes in the mortgage business in the last 10 years. That is not an overestimation. Little tweaks. All of those things made the market less affordable. Tightening purse strings, the stress test, drawing back how much somebody can qualify for, loan to income requirements. Every single week it happens in our business. This is the most positive change that I've seen in 15 years. If you're a first-time home buyer, you can now access a 30-year amortization. That 30-year amortization does one of two things. It makes the home more affordable for you, or it allows you to qualify for more of a home. Period. So let's look at the example, okay? This is a townhouse in Barrie, $600,000. The interest rate that I've used is the 5-year fixed interest rate, and the amortization that I've used is 25 years. This is before December. This was your only option if you have less than 20% down. The monthly payment plus taxes is about $3,100. So you can rent that home, I asked the people in the back, for about $2,500 or $2,600. So you could own the home for about, I don't know, maybe $800 or $900 a month more. It's okay, but it's not really enticing, is it? Let's roll forward to the 30-year amortization. The 30-year amortization is $300 a month less. It's great. So if I can rent it for, say, $2,600 or own it for around $3,000, I'm going to try and own it. Owning a home is still more expensive than renting it in this environment. It's going to change. Interest rates are expected to go down. What we don't know is when home prices are going to go up, right? And that could change that equation as well. But in terms of qualifying, absolutely you take the lowest payment you can on the best house you can afford, period. Now, when it comes to affordability and qualifying, I have a little, the fine print up there. Double income is key. Another really sad story that I hear in the mortgage business, I get a call and they're like, I got a great career. I graduated 3 years ago. I'd like to buy a home. I'm like, great. What do you do for a living? I work for the city of Barrie. I make $92,000 a year. I'm like, great. Do you have a partner? Is there another income? They're like, no, just me. What's really challenging about that equation is it's just not enough to break into the Simcoe County house market, right? So here are a few examples. $500,000 home, you need $105,000 in household income if you have zero debt. Zero. So if you want to buy that $600,000 townhome that we just looked at, $125,000. So the white collar professional, well-educated, great credit, has a gift from her family to buy the home. They have the down payment. That's not her problem. Her problem is that the income is $92,000 and it's not enough to break into any of these categories. They're left buying a condo, for example, and there's nothing wrong with that. But wait, now there's condo fees and they don't quite qualify for that either. So that's why I say double income is really key to this market right now, unless you have help. We call this the bank of mom and dad. You heard that term before? That means your parents are willing to help you. Now, there is a considerable amount of people who get help from their parents. There's a more considerable group of people who do not get help from their parents. I did not get help from my parents. You hear this story all the time, but if you do have parents that say they want to help or you think that they might help, they're going to help in one of two ways. Rarely do they ever help in both ways. The first way is they gift you a down payment. Very simple process. The second is that they co-sign. Rarely will a parent, never will a parent, do both. Give you the down payment and co-sign. Now, in terms of what they're more willing to do, I can tell you through doing this thousands of times. If mom and dad are still working and they have income, they're willing to co-sign. They have big heavy T4s. They're in a good situation. They're like, yeah, I'll co-sign. I'll figure out this later. Because by the time they're ready and willing to retire, you'll have sold the home, take them off title, refinance. It's out of the way. So as long as their retirement plan is about 5 years from now, they'll co-sign. If they're working, they'll co-sign. If they're retired, they'll give you the down payment. That's how it works. If they're retired, their house is probably paid off. They probably have a big line of credit and some investments. They give you a living inheritance for say $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000, and they help you to buy the home through the down payment. That's how the bank with mom and dad works. Okay, so just think to yourself, if you're in the audience, do I have a parent that would help? Yes, no. If the answer is yes, are they working? If they're working, they'll likely co-sign. If they're retired, chances are they're going to want to just give you the cash. They don't want to tie up their own personal affairs. So that's how the bank of mom and dad works. Okay, if you don't have a co-signer, if you don't have a parent that can help, I want you to think of the mortgage triangle like a bar stool. Okay, so there's only 3 legs. You need 2 really strong legs on the bar stool or you're going to fall over at the bar. We've all done it. Okay, the good old days. So, if you, for example, don't have a down payment, there are programs, and I'm going to walk you through them in a moment, but you better make sure that your credit and income are very, very strong. Now, likewise, if you have a huge down payment, huge, and you have income, you work at Honda, but your credit is destroyed from a bankruptcy, but you have 50% down, we can get you a mortgage. You see how this works? You need 2 of those 3. Now, if you have all 3, we help those people every day. That's very simple, right? If you have all 3 of those things, like, you should be exploring buying right now. But if you have 2 of those 3 things, there are options, okay? So when you think of this mortgage triangle, really what we're going to be talking about in the next few slides is if you have great credit or good credit is fine, and income, and you lack the down payment. I'm going to show you a few ways through that. The first one is, is it everybody's favorite program now? It's all of our favorite program, right? Everybody at the back of the room, it's our favorite program. When I got into the business in 2007, this program was a few years old. There was a 3-year waiting list for this program. So the government gave a bunch of municipalities a seed fund. The seed fund was to help people in their community move from a renting household to a home ownership household, period. To qualify for this program, you have to be renting in Simcoe County. Okay, that's number 1. This is affordable home ownership as a program, which means that there's a maximum income, not a minimum income, a maximum income, okay? The maximum income is $126,000. There's also a maximum home price, which is $702,000. Actually, just went down. It was $712,000 before. Still lots of room available in there, okay? I'm going to show you an example in a moment that'll blow you away. This program is available today. If you have good credit, you have household income of less than $126,000, you absolutely should be looking into this program. It is free money. So give you a guess?
You know what the wait line is.
It's days. It's crazy. There's no wait list. I'm telling you, it was years before. Picture this. We used to meet with somebody and get them pre-approved. And 2.5 years later, they're like, "Hey, it's Tyler." And I'm like, "Hey, Tyler, how you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, you probably don't remember me. We met, we talked about the Simcoe County thing." I'm like, that was 2.5 years ago. Yeah, I just got the letter in the mail. I qualify now. I'm like, okay, let's go, And then it's off to the races. There's no wait list for this program right now. When I talk to the good people at Simcoe County, you know what they say? Consumer sentiment is kind of down. People are unsure about the housing market. I'm like, you can get $70,000 for your down payment. It's considered home equity. There's no payments on it. It's 0 interest. If you live in the home for 20 years, it's 100% forgivable. If you don't own the home for 20 years, because a lot of people don't, you pay the grant back when you sell the home, plus 10% of your profits. You make $200,000, you pay back $20,000. And I can tell you, because I've talked to hundreds of people that have taken advantage of this program, when they pay it back and they pay back their percentage of profits, they're smiling because they're helping the next person down the line enter into the program, and it allows the program to grow. So if you're sitting here in the audience today and you work and you have credit and down payment is your barrier to entry, you meet these requirements, namely the household income, that's the big one, of $126,000, please speak to somebody in the room about it. There's no wait list. It's an incredible program. It will help you get into home ownership. Okay. So if there's any takeaway from my presentation, it's this one right here. Please, if you qualify for this, talk to somebody today, after this, or on Monday. Okay. Because this is the best program available in home ownership. I just want to show you a quick example. This is a condo. The Peggy Health team helped the buyer of this condo. So this was $399,000. It's a beautiful 2-bedroom condo. It's just right down the street from here. If you follow veterans all the way down, it's on Ferndale. Now the down payment from the program would be $40,000. The household income for this is only $83,000. The condo fees are really reasonable. The property taxes are really reasonable. This is a real world deal. This is very, very, very plausible. Let me show you what the payment looks like, okay? So again, $83,000 of household income required. The monthly payment is $1,700. The property taxes are cheap, $133 a month. Condo fees are also very cheap. Those also include water. Your total monthly payment is about $2,200. I don't know if you could rent that for $2,200. Yeah.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
if you do get approved for the Simcoe County program,
Yeah.
how many days until, let's say you're putting an offer on a house, it's conditional on that funding or whatever, how many days until that's actually released, to make that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, if you're approved for the program and you buy a home, how many days do you need to sort of process everything? There are some key requirements. So we have a bunch of links to the program and stuff. So feel free to reach out and I can guide you through it in like a lot of detail. But generally speaking, what you do is you get pre-approved. You supply the pre-approval. You fill out the application. It's like, I'm going to say a week to get approved sort of thing. They give you a really great like congrats approval letter. You have a certain number of days to go out and find a home. It's always a moving target depending on how much they have. Like, you know, if they have 100 applications, when there was a wait list, you had like 10 days to buy a home. Because if you didn't want to buy, they wanted to give it to somebody else. There's a little bit more time now. But once you go out and you find the perfect home with your realtor and you buy, we always say, you know, put a conditional offer in 5 days sort of thing. And that's very realistic in this market. You can get 5 days, I think, right? Yeah, I see all like the sales partners going, yeah, that's good. So about 5 days sort of thing. You need a home inspection for this program. Basically, the county just wants to ensure that you're buying a good home that is not going to cripple you financially, right? Because it's an affordable home ownership program. So I think it's a really comfortable program for timeline purposes. Like they make it very comfortable for sure. That will work with you. But here's a home that, you know, like $2,200 is very reasonable. And in this circumstance was purchased with no down payment whatsoever. It's great. So again, yes, sorry.
Just clarify further.
Yeah.
So they're talking about a down payment approval for the Simcoe housing. However, what if they have a deposit ready for it? How can they collect both of them to make the payments cheaper as well?
Yeah, sure. So under the program requirements, you can actually contribute up to $20,000 of your own money. So you can have maximum assets of $50,000, but you can only contribute $20,000 of your own money. So in this circumstance, for example, you could take that $40,000 and grow it to $60,000. Now, if you had more than that, I posed the question before, like, what if you're only allowed to put down $20,000 at closing? What if you had the other $30,000, like, you know, you had $50,000 in assets? You could just make a prepayment on your mortgage after the fact as well, make a lump sum. And again, a lot of times what we do is we tell people, like, keep that slush fund. Like, you're a new homeowner, keep that slush fund. When your property tax bill rolls in every year, you have enough money to just, you know, exclude your property taxes from the payment, just pay them once, for example. I do sort of, so these are new requirements. If you go to the program webpage, it hasn't been updated yet. They release the new requirements every year in April. So they've shared those with us for this presentation today. You won't find these requirements on the website quite yet. Okay, the maximum household income is going to show a little bit lower at about $120,000. And most notably, the maximum assets would be about $20,000, where they're now $50,000. So I just thought I'd sort of mention that. I do suspect that the maximum amount that you can contribute will go up to $50,000 as well. Yeah, thanks. So that's the example. And then just sort of, I mentioned there's no waiting list. So just sort of in closing, we're going to go through some myths and some truths really quickly. It's not worth it to pay the CMHC insurance if you have less than 20% down. We answer that. It's added to the mortgage. Chances are your home will appreciate far more than the CMHC insurance investment. I can't buy a home while I have student debt. I hear this all the time. Most people who are buying and selling their third, fourth, or fifth home still have a student loan because it's like $80 a month. Don't think that you have to be debt free to buy a home. We work it all in as sort of part of the financial plan. I missed my opportunity. House prices are still too high. I hear this all the time, despite the fact that home prices have come down. They're just still too high. I can assure you, if you get pre-approved, if you take advantage of the Simcoe County Homebuyers Grant, if you get a down payment gifted from your folks, I guarantee if you are pre-approved, this team will find you something in your price range that you will love. There's plenty of homes available right now. I can only buy with 5% down once. If anybody is in the audience today and has owned a home before and has been out of the market, you're considered a first-time home buyer in a lot of ways. The only thing that you disqualify from, if you previously owned a home, is the land transfer tax credit. That's a one-time credit. All of the other programs are readily available to you. I need perfect credit. You just need good credit. I'm just going to pause at the last one. I'm going to wait for the market to crash. There's a lot of stuff in the media right now. I can assure you all this stuff is going to push interest rates down. What that's going to do to the housing market, we don't know.
How do we do?
I was waiting for that. When interest rates go down,
House prices go up.
that is always the way it goes. Okay, there's a few circumstances where that doesn't happen. We won't get into that today. But historically, when interest rates go down, it increases buyer behavior. People buy, home prices go up. That hasn't happened yet. Okay. But we're certainly not looking at that last item, wait for the market to crash. We hear it all the time, like literally every day. A couple of truths, just so I can help sort of speed up the agenda for you guys. About 1/3 of first-time homebuyers get help from their parents. If parents are an option, I encourage you to schedule an appointment with Peggy Realty, schedule an appointment with my team, and bring everybody into the room. The parents, you guys, let's just talk about it. We're not talking about credit checks and income verifications. We're talking about a conversation. But if it's an option for you, start the conversation. Minimum down payment mortgages are very easy to get approved. 5% down, 7% down, 10% down. They're very, very, very affordable. Late transfer tax credits apply for first-time homebuyers. If you buy a duplex, which is like one of the best opportunities in the market, you can use up to 100% of the rental income to help qualify you for the mortgage. So if you, for example, are a double income household and you guys make $90,000 a year, for example, if you buy something that has $2,500 in rental income potential from the upstairs or the downstairs, that's $30,000 a year. We've literally just increased your income by 1/3 on the mortgage application, right to the bottom line. It increases your budget significantly. Owning a home right now is a little more expensive than rent. Let's explore some opportunities. And again, minimum down payments are very, very, very easily accessible right now. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, let's see if I know which direction we're gonna go. So, gonna start with, what is a home inspection? A home inspection is a detailed assessment of all the components of the home. Let it be the structure, let it be the systems that function in the home, and the roof, the exterior, and then, what does the inspector really look at? What we look at is anything that we can see, anything that we get to, we're going to inspect. Inspector is always going to start outside and take into account what is the grading, what's the exterior of the home, how's the windows, the doors, the roof. If we can't get up to the roof, we're going to use a drone. If there's a crawl space and we can't get in because of our girth, we're going to use a robot. And then why is a home inspection important for you? Because we're going to give you an unbiased opinion of all the components of the home. We're going to give you the information that you need to make a good decision. And X-dash? So we're going to give you an unbiased information that's going to help you make the right decision for you. And then sometimes we're going to give you information that you can use in negotiating. Your agent will help you with that. The top 5 things to know about. Well, there's a lot more than 5, but the top 5 are we're going to be interested in. One is the electrical systems in the home. Is it a 60 amp service? Is it older wiring it for century homes? Is there knob and tube left in there? Is it ungrounded? When it comes to plumbing, is there galvanized piping systems throughout the house? Or is there a type of piping system there that has been recalled and it's going to cause a concern with your insurance company? The HVAC systems, that's endless because there's so many things that could go wrong there that we're going to identify for you. And then I think I must have turned this up.
Oh, swap you. Cheers. I'm not taking you away for that.
So then, where am I? What's in the attic? We're going to be looking at the different types of insulation that's in the attic, how much insulation that you have, and most certainly the ventilation. The ventilation is a component that's overlooked, and we're going to help identify, is it good? Does it need improvement? Is it difficult to improvement? And all the things that we do identify, we're going to help you. Is your mind at ease? Is it a difficult challenge? Is it easily corrected? And that's what would the vehicle provide for you. And then how long will my roof last? Well, a lot of things determine that. Let it be the facing of the sun, which way is the direction, then what is the drainage off the home? And again, to go back, is there enough ventilation in the attic that's not going to have an impact on the shingles? And what type of shingles? There's been many shingles on the market that have been recalled. And buying an older home. There's a lot to look for in an older home. There's different construction techniques that were used in century homes. We'll help identify those for you. And we're going to be looking at certain components that we know are subject to failure. And then how old this furnace, water heater, and all the systems in the home. We'll help identify the age of them, what's the average life expectancy, and what should you be budgeting for. Okay, well, I'm going to turn this over to Sharon.
It's me, insurance. Most exciting part of the presentation. Said no one ever. But it is the unnecessary evil. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what exactly home insurance is. Well, it's an insurance policy that covers your home, which is one of your biggest investments, one of your biggest assets. It's comprised of three main portions. One is dwelling, which covers your structure. The other is personal property, which will cover everything from your toothbrush to your refrigerators and everything in between. And of course, your liability, which covers injury and damage to others. So some of the factors that can affect the cost for insurance are the home's age, size, and location. So if you have a newer home, that's going to be a little bit cheaper than an older home. And that's simply because a newer home has less that's going to go wrong with it. Location, if you're on a flood zone, then you're probably going to have a little bit more premium dollars going towards your insurance. And the size, obviously, the larger the home, the larger the cost of insurance is going to be. Replacement costs, that comes into play as well. Replacement cost is what insurance companies estimate it will cost us to rebuild your home in the event of a claim. So heaven forbid, fire, your house burns to the ground. It happens. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. We need to know what it's going to cost us approximately to rebuild your home. That is replacement cost. So the higher the replacement cost, the higher the cost of the insurance. Claims history. So we're going to ask you personally, have you had any claims in the last 7 years on a home that you've owned in the past, or perhaps a renter's policy, but also on the actual home itself. So has the home that you're purchasing had any claims in the last 7 years? That could impact the price as well. Fire protection. So how close are you to a fire hall? Are you within 8 kilometers of a fire hall? Are you within 300 meters of a fire hydrant? If you are, that's considered a protected property. If you're not, it's unprotected. And those unprotected properties do have a bit of a surcharge, so you need to consider that when it comes to your insurance. Credit score. So this is a big one. In Ontario, insurance companies use credit to help determine the cost of your insurance premium on your home alone. Home policy, not auto insurance. So if you are purchasing a home with your spouse, with your partner, with your best friend, it's prudent for you to figure out who has the best credit score, and that is the person who should give credit consent when you're doing your homeowner application. It is a soft hit on your credit. It's not a hard hit like it would be if you were a client of a mortgage or a car. It's a soft hit, so it does not impact your credit score going forward. It's not something that we see. It's just something on the back end that we hit, and it pulls in, and it gives us it impacts the price of your insurance. Additional endorsements, so that you have a basic block of your insurance policy, and then on top of that, you can add endorsements. Endorsements can take away coverage, but also add coverage. So things like flood, things like endorsement 42, which is above water claims, or above ground water, sorry. So anything that is going to increase the coverage on your policy is obviously going to impact the price. Deductible amount. So a deductible is actually the portion of your policy, or a portion of the claim that you are going to pay out of your own pocket. So if you choose $1,000 deductible on your home policy, you are going to pay $1,000 towards that claim. If you choose a $5,000 deductible, you're going to pay $5,000 of that claim. So you need to be aware of that. And yes, if you choose a higher deductible, potentially your premiums could be less, but you need to be able to come up with that $5,000 in the event of a claim. So do you have that available on a credit card? Do you have that in a bank account? Are you going to be able to come up with that money at the time of claim? Security features. So if you do have a monitored alarm system of some sort on your property, then that will give you a small discount as well on your insurance. So things to consider when you're looking for your new home. Well, as Glenn attested, the roof. So if your roof has 25-year shingles on it and it's 25 years old and they haven't been replaced, we're still going to be able to give you insurance, but we're going to exclude the coverage that damages that result from their roof. So for example, that endorsement that I talked about, endorsement 42, I don't want to bore you with the details, but that covers things like ice damage, which I'm going through right now. It's not fun. So if you don't have that coverage, you're not going to be able to make a claim. So you want to make sure that you know what your shingles are on the roof, how old it is, and whether you can get the appropriate coverage that you need. Water tank. So similar, the magic number there is 12 years. If it's 12 years or older and it's not being replaced, we're not going to cover you for damage that results from that water leakage. And that does make a mess, and it happens all the time. So something that you want to look for. Wood stoves. You want to make sure that you get a wet certificate for that. You want to make sure that that's been installed properly, that it's working properly, it has the protective shields around it, and that the chimney is working the way it should be. We won't always ask for the wet certificate, but there are times when we will, so you want to make sure that you do have that wet certificate. And again, past claims. So I already talked about how that could impact your premium, but it also should be something that you're looking at when you're buying a home. So if you're going through that home for the second time for the walkthrough, and that sump pump has been going for 24 hours and it's constantly on, inevitably there's going to be a claim. And those aren't fun either. So these are some of the things that you want to look for when you're out there searching for your home. Plumbing. Galvanized, we're not going to touch it. Decline. So if you find a home with galvanized plumbing, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who's going to insure it. Wiring, knob and tube, decline. We're not going to touch it. So again, that's where people like Glenn, those home inspectors, you really need to rely on their expertise. If it's aluminum, we will. However, we may ask for an electrician to verify it. We want to make sure that the wiring is proper and that all the switch plates are what they need to be. Okay, so you're looking for help for making those mortgage payments, and Peggy talked about this a little bit too. So, some people use Airbnb and VRBO. They go away for a month, maybe every year, and they rent out their home because they want to make some money to help pay for that mortgage. That is something that we will allow, but there is a surcharge on the policy for that, and it's only up to a maximum of 180 days that you can rent out. If you're renting rooms, yes, we can do that. We can insure you still. However, there's a maximum of 3 rooms that we're going to allow you to rent out. And that's because we're not in the business of rooming homes. We don't want that business. So maximum 3 rooms, but we'll allow it. Renting your entire home. So let's say you've bought this house and you want to still stay with mom and dad, but you're going to rent out the entire home. Perfect. That changes the policy a bit. It's now a rent-a-dwelling policy. And what we're looking for is to have you rent it to a family. We don't want to see those 3, 4 unrelated people that you're renting it out to. Again, that's not something that we want to see. We want to see those families that you're renting it to. Basement apartments, perfect. And again, those, as Peggy mentioned, those are going to help you dramatically with your mortgage payments. And we'll allow it. And we don't ask whether it's legal or non-legal. We don't care. The whole thing with this slide is disclose, disclose, disclose. You want to tell your insurance company all of this information because we have to have the proper coverages on the policy. The last thing you want is that time of claim we're denying because you didn't disclose something. So disclose, disclose, disclose. So common mistakes that first-time home buyers make. Well, you've got a massive mortgage now. You've got utility bills. You've got property taxes. You've got condo fees, you've got everything going on right now. So where you look to cut? Insurance. That's not wise. You want to make sure that you're properly covered. So you want to make sure you have the endorsements that you need on the policy. So you want to talk to your insurance person. You want to make sure that you're properly covered. Don't skimp on insurance. I do not advise it. Forgetting to update after the renovation. So let's say you purchased that fixer-upper, and now you've redone the kitchen and you put in a basement apartment and you've added a swimming pool or a hot tub. These are all things that your insurance company needs to be aware of, and we need to properly add the coverage onto your policy. So make sure that you're advising us. And finally, something that's near and dear to my heart and that I'm very passionate about is making sure that you purchase term life insurance versus mortgage insurance through a financial institution. So life insurance is basically a policy that you take out on yourself, and we're all dying. It's just a matter of time when we're going to go. So we want to make sure that we have enough coverage on ourselves to cover off that mortgage. And there's ways to do that: term life insurance or mortgage insurance through a financial institution. So I just want to talk about some of the differences between those two. First of all, with term life insurance, the purpose of it is to provide a death benefit to your family. So the money is going to go to your family, your beneficiary, versus the mortgage insurance, which is just strictly to pay off the mortgage. That's the purpose of it. Coverage. So if you have a mortgage of $500,000, you're going to choose a coverage amount of $500,000 or more, depending on what your needs are. And that coverage amount is going to stay in place for whatever term you choose, whether it's 10 years, 25 years, 30 years, whereas mortgage insurance has a decreasing term coverage. So as you pay down your mortgage, so does the amount of the insurance. You're still paying the same amount, but the coverage is actually decreasing. Beneficiaries. So with term life insurance, you choose the beneficiary, whether that's your spouse, your partner, your best friend, your child, your mother. You choose who the beneficiary is. With mortgage insurance, they're the beneficiary. Portability. So with mortgage insurance, it's tied to your mortgage. So if you take out a 3-year term or 5-year term, that mortgage insurance is based on that term. And at the end of that term, it's done basically. Let's say Nick is providing a great rate on the mortgage that when it comes up for renewal, and you want to run down the street and you want to go to him because he's offering the best rate. You don't take your mortgage insurance with you. It's done. With a term life insurance policy, it's almost like having it in your back pocket. So it's 20-year term or 30-year term. It's in your back pocket for that period of time. If you want to run down the street to Nick and get the mortgage through him, you're still covered because it's in your back pocket. Flexibility. So again, you choose the term amount, whether it's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. And with mortgage insurance, it's basically the term of the mortgage and that's it. Whether you take a 3-year term, 5-year term, whatever that looks like. And finally, one of the most important things is the underwriting. So when you take out a term life insurance policy, all of the underwriting is done up front. So we're going to ask you all the medical questions. And depending on the amount that you choose and your age, we may ask for medical and we'll send a nurse to you. They're going to take blood, they're going to do your weight, they're going to do your height, send everything away, and then we're going to come back and we're going to offer you a policy. There it is. It's yours. Yours to keep for as long as you want it. With mortgage insurance, it's done at time of claim, at time of death. And I've seen it often. A lot of times they don't pay out. So you want to make sure that you're covered. Term insurance, way more than mortgage insurance. And that's it. Home insurance, life insurance, make sure you're covered.
Okay, good afternoon. Now we're at. My name is Mark Weir. I am the owner of HMH Law Offices. First off, I just want to thank Peggy, Charlotte, Terry, Alyssa, everyone on the Peggy Hill team that's here today and put this event together. And a big thank you to the panel up here. This is a great opportunity today. You have a variety of experienced professionals here that genuinely want to see each and every one of you achieve your dream of home ownership. You've heard a few of them say, just buy the property, just get in. That's not a salesperson trying to get a quick client. That is real world advice. Each of us have worked with real estate clients at all different levels. Some of the most successful clients I work with are full-time real estate investors that are buying $10 million, $20 million apartment buildings. Every one of them started where you are today, and every one of them lives and dies by the adage of it is not about timing the market, it is about time in the market. So buy that distressed property in the right part of town, add the second suite to it, run a house hack, and if you want to acquire more doors, you can look into the BRRRR method, buy, renovate, rent, repeat. finance repeat. Time tested. Moving into my presentation here. So closing on your first term, your first home. So in Ontario, we use what we call land titles system for real estate registration. It's based off an Australian system called the Torrens system. Effectively, the provincial government keeps track of real estate transactions, keeps track of real estate registrations. And they guarantee that the information in their system is accurate. Or in order for them to provide that guarantee, take on that risk, they restrict who has access to that system and who can register in that system. Effectively, only licensed Ontario lawyers with a specific insurance rider to practice real estate are able to access that system. So you'll need a real estate lawyer to close your transaction, register your deed on title, register your mortgage. There are a lot of things that your lawyer will do that, assuming everything goes properly, you probably won't know or care about. Most buyers aren't too interested in what it is that I'm looking for on title search, what requisitions I'm making of the seller's lawyer, the day-to-day communications with your lender, unless there's an issue. And of course, we'll bring you in and discuss, hey, there's an old easement that runs through here. It's going to be, something that you'll have to take on. In my experience, though, with first-time home buyers, these are the top 3 concerns that clients have when dealing with their real estate lawyer. Top 3 questions or issues. Number 1, closing costs. Above and beyond the purchase price of the property, how much money will you need to close the transaction? What else is involved? Number 2, how to hold title. You may not even know yet that this is a concern of yours, but it is a discussion you will have and want to have with your real estate lawyer. How are you going to hold title to this asset, especially if there is more than one owner on title? And then number 3, what happens on closing day? When and how do you get the keys and access to your property? Spoiler alert, it's not going to be first thing. It's probably going to be mid to late afternoon. So diving into the closing costs here. So here's some of the typical closing costs on a real estate purchase. Generally for closing costs, you want to ballpark around 1.5% to 2% of the purchase price. Your biggest hit is going to be the land transfer tax. This is a marginal provincial tax. It is based off of the purchase price. On a sliding scale, as a marginal tax rate will do. So the first $55,000 of the purchase price is subject to 0.5%. It's 1% on everything from $55,000 to $400,000. To $250,000. From $250,000 to $400,000, it's 1.5%. From $400,000 up to $2 million is 2%. And if you have to be buying a property over $2 million, then you start to get into a 2.5% tax on it. Usually it averages out to about 1.5% of the purchase price. And that's before your first-time home buyer's rebate. So in this example here, if you have a purchase price of $750,000, you're going to have provincial land transfer tax of $11,475 on top of the purchase price. If you are purchasing in the city of Toronto, double that. They have a municipal tax as well. And they do give you a comparable rebate. But as first-time home buyers, you could be eligible for up to a $4,000 rebate on this land transfer tax. So in this example, it would bring it down to $7,475. There are specific qualifications to get that first-time home buyer's rebate. It is on an individual basis, so we're going to have to look at everybody that's going on title. If you are obtaining help from the bank of mom and dad and they are co-signing and going on title, it can impact how much of that rebate you can get. And you can't bank it, you can't stack it, you can't save it for a later date. So if you have 2 first-time home buyers, you don't get an $8,000 rebate. It's $4,000 on the transaction. It is one and done. There are 3 main criterion to qualify for this. Number 1, and this is for every individual involved in the purchase. Number 1, you must never have owned any property anywhere in the world. Number 2, you have not been the spouse of an individual during a time period when that individual owned property, or else you'd be considered to have a spousal interest. And this is property anywhere in the world, not just in Ontario. And number 3, you need to be buying the property as your primary residence. They give you up to 9 months to move into it. They understand new builds and things like that. But you need to meet all 3 of those. And if anyone in the transaction doesn't meet it, it's going to prorate the amount of the rebate you can get. So if you're going on title with a parent and they don't qualify as a first-time home buyer, and you go 50-50 on title, you could end up only getting $2,000 of that rebate. So you want to talk to your lawyer about how you're holding title and how to maximize that rebate. Instead of getting 50% and only $2,000, we can get you up to 99% in that scenario and get you $3,960. So you only lose out on $40 instead of $2,000. But your land transfer tax is going to be your biggest closing costs. It's usually, as I said, about 1.5% of the property, purchase price of the property. Next up, we have adjustments. These aren't true closing costs. These are more prepaid carrying costs. It's going to be property taxes, condo fees, heat, propane, things like that. So you're buying the property, let's say you're closing May 1st, and it may be that the seller has paid property taxes right up to the end of June. Well, you're going to have to credit them for 2 months of property taxes. That could be a few $100s. It could be, $1,000 or more. You would have had to pay this to the municipality eventually anyway, but you might have to come up with that right away on closing date because it's already been prepaid. If you're buying a condo fees, common element fees, those are going to be paid on the first day of the month. And if you're closing on the 10th of the month, you'll have to credit the seller for those 20 days that they've prepaid for you. It could be another few $100s. And depending on the type of property you're purchasing, there could be other adjustments such as heat and propane. If you're buying a rural property outside of town and it doesn't have natural gas hookup, you might have a propane tank sitting in the yard that is heating the property. It's probably going to be about $100 a year rental fee on the propane tank, plus you are going to buy the fuel that is in the tank from the seller. That could be another $1,200, or if there's 2 tanks, you have to double that up. Sure, you're not going to have your heating bill really for the rest of the year, but you got to pay that up front and have those funds available. So the adjustments aren't really true closing costs, but you don't want to be blindsided by them and find out, oh, there's $2,000 that we don't have in our account. We weren't planning expecting. And unfortunately, a lot of the times we don't know these adjustment amounts until a couple of days before closing because we're dependent on the seller telling us how much have they prepaid for taxes, how much fuel is in the tank. Usually we want them to fill it. If you're buying a new build directly from the builder, you're probably going to have about 4 or 5 pages of adjustments for meter hookups and grading deposits and tear-down insurance and things like that. Mortgage insurance. So your CMHC insurance. Yes, your lender is going to lend you the policy amount. So in this case, you're buying for $750,000. You have a 90% loan to value, so you put 10% down. Your insurance premium will be just under $21,000. That's going to be tacked on your mortgage. You won't have to come up with that on the closing day. But on that $21,000, there's going to be an 8% provincial sales tax, which your lender won't lend you. So in this case, that's $1,674 that you will have to come up with on the closing day. They're not going to add that onto your mortgage in most cases. So something to be aware of as well for the mortgage insurance. There is a tax on it. Most of these closing costs are taxes, unfortunately. Legal fees, disbursements, title insurance. This is also going to be another closing cost. So your legal fees, there are a number of factors that can skew them. Number one is the purchase price. All of the funds in the transaction are going to be flowing through the lawyer's trust account. The more money flowing through the trust account, the more risk for the lawyer, the more insurance coverage we need to purchase, and that can cause things to go up marginally a little bit here and there. The type of property, this one's not going to be as much of an issue for first-time home buyers, but if you're buying a commercial property, there's going to be other searches we need to do. That's going to increase the time, going to increase the disbursements that we have. And then the type of lender that you have. If you're dealing with RBC, Scotia, BMO, they're a breeze to deal with. We know their paperwork. They know our paperwork. They trust us, and no problem. Because in this transaction, your lawyer is going to be acting for you as the borrower, and also, in most cases, for your lender as the lender. They need a lawyer to register on title. They let you use yours. Private lenders, other lenders, and B lenders, sometimes they have more work, more paperwork, more forms, and might create more work for your lawyer to do. Your disbursements are out-of-pocket expenses for things like search costs, registrations, title insurance. We'll get to that in a moment. Rates of execution. This is money that the law office needs to pay, mainly to the government. So think of it as parts and labor. When you get your car fixed, the labor is the legal fees. The parts are the disbursements. $65 to register this in the system with the provincial government. Search for rates of execution and stuff, and we'll get into that a bit more in the Q&A section. And then title insurance. This is something that's required by all lenders in the province. There are a couple of options, but usually title insurance is by far the most preferred and most cost effective, and it's often going to be between $400 to $600 on most of your transactions. It's a one-time purchase. It's not an annual premium. And the things that sort of skew those numbers are the purchase price and the type of property, where it is, and who your lender is, all the risk factors that the title insurance company will want to assess. So all told, your legal fees, disbursements, title insurance, you could be looking at maybe $2,500 to $3,000 on most transactions. Your legal fees are going to be less than half of that. A lot of it's going to be the disbursements and the title insurance there. So you want to factor that in as well. So with all of those added up, you're going to be looking at typically about 1.5% to 2% of the purchase price for your closing costs, a lot of it being taxes. Each property is different. It depends on, if you're in the city and you don't have an adjustment for propane fuel, let's say it's about $1,200. Then you're going to have your average bill later on in the month or in the year. Topic number 2, how to hold title. So there's a number of different ways that we can represent legal tenure on title to the property and how you're holding it. The 2 main ones are joint tenants and tenants in common. So if it's just one person buying the property and going on title, they're the registered owner. We show that on the title abstract. We register them as the registered owner, pretty plain and simple. When we have more than one person on title, we need to specify in the deed who owns what share, how they're holding it, and what happens in certain scenarios, like if the property is sold or if one of the owners passes away. Joint tenancy is by far the most prevalent way we see spouses holding title. There are big advantages to it in that regard. Basically, joint tenancy says that each joint tenant has equal claim to the property. If it's sold during your lifetime, so you split the proceeds accordingly. But the advantage of joint tenancy, particularly with spouses, is it grants right of survivorship. If one joint tenant passes away, the surviving joint tenant acquires their share through right of survivorship. And for estate planning, it saves on probate time, fees. I'm dealing with a couple of these right now where a spouse has passed away, surviving spouse is not on title. Long story short, it's going to cost that surviving spouse between 6 and 8 months of their time and $20,000 to $30,000 in fees to the government to get ownership of the house that they legally, technically still already own. The other option is tenants in common. We do this in a number of scenarios. We might do it with blended families where, no, my spouse is not going to keep my share of the property if I pass away. It's going to go to my kids. We do this with business partnerships where, of course, my business partner doesn't get my share if I die. It goes to my family. And most commonly for first-time home buyers, we do this when there is a requirement for a parent to co-sign and qualify for the mortgage. We'll put the parent on as a 1% tenant in common, and we'll put the first-time home buyer as a 99% owner of the property, and that's going to maximize your first-time home buyer rebate. So with tenants in common, we would specify the share of each party. It might be 50-50, it might be 99-1, it might be 70-30, any combination adding up to 100. You sell the house, you split your proceeds accordingly. If you pass away, your share goes through your estate. And we can, have further discussions on a case-by-case basis of how to maximize the efficiencies on that. But there are also Family Law Act considerations, between spouses. Do you have domestic contracts in place, cohabitation agreements? Is this a matrimonial home or a family residence? You're going to want to be having these conversations with the lawyer and what that means. For do we need spousal consent to put the mortgage on? Or will you need it in the future to sell the property? In many cases, yes, you will. And then estate planning consequences we discussed somewhat within, the joint tenancy, some built-in estate planning there. But you do want to have a conversation with your lawyer about what happens to this asset if I pass away? Who's going to get it and how is that carried out? What are the logistics of that? And then get into what happens on closing day, the real important part stuff. When do you get your keys? When do you get access to your property? So on closing day, your lawyer's going to be dealing with a number of things. The biggest thing we're going to be communicating with your lender. But first off, there resolved any outstanding issues. Ideally, there are no outstanding issues. But let's say did you walk through the night before and the dishwasher's not working? Let us know right away. We're going to be in touch with the seller's lawyer. We're going to be discussing with them either to get it fixed, get a holdback, get an abatement, whatever the case may be, to make sure that you're not going to be paying for that after closing. Facilitate transfer of funds. We're going to be communicating with your lender. We're going to be requesting the funds. Your lender is not going to put $500,000 in your bank account and then just trust that you're going to go ahead and buy the property with it and not go down to Mexico with that money. They're going to put it into your lawyer's trust account, who will then send it to the seller's lawyer's trust account, who will then use that money to pay off any current mortgages on the property and then pay out to their clients so that everyone involved gets what they're supposed to get at the end of the day. So that is the biggest holdup in getting you your keys is when do we get the funds to close your house? Now, the good thing about first-time home buyers is we're really just dealing with one variable most of the time, which is funds for the lender. If you own a home and you're buying and selling on the same day, you could be caught up in a chain where you need the sale proceeds from your sale to fund your purchase. but the person buying your house might need their sale to close, and the person buying their house might need their sale to close, and we could be getting at 4:55 and we don't have funds in our account and we're starting to get real nervous. The transaction could close anytime up until 5 o'clock on the day of closing. There are some scenarios where it can potentially close between 5 and 6, but usually the banks are closed and the money's not moving after 5 o'clock unless it's been wired and it's still on the way. So once we have all the funds, we're going to register the deed, we're going to register the mortgage, we're going to give you a call, and we're going to say, hey, congratulations, the house is yours now, you can go on in. Prior to COVID, you would have been coming down to my office to pick up a physical key to get into that property. Now it's working a bit more smoothly, especially with, homes being all over the place and us dealing with clients all over the province. Most realtors are now leaving lock boxes on the property for 24 to 48 hours after closing. We get a 4 or 6-digit code to relay to you to say, go to the property, get your key, it's all yours, go in, and then that lockbox will disappear a couple of days later. It's important that you get that key right away, you check on the property, you make sure the code worked, the key's still there, and that the property's still in the condition that it was the last time we saw it, and they haven't gouged the halls up, taken the couch down out the door, and they haven't left a whole bunch of things there. And if there are any issues, you're going to give us a call and we'll seek to deal with that afterwards. But that is sort of my spiel there. I can pass this back one.
Okay, so now we're going to get into our frequently asked questions section. As I mentioned, I recently, well, not recently, but 6 years ago bought my first home, and I have lots of friends who are in this kind of group right now. So I covered a lot of questions in here that I think that first-time buyers often have, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So if you guys have any questions out there that haven't been answered by the end of this segment, please just put up your hand. We're happy to answer them. So the first one was, how much can I use for a down payment for my RSP? Nick, this one was more directed at you.
I heard there are some messages going around, sit up straight. I'm like, okay. So what we find is people that just aren't ready yet to buy a home contribute to their RSPs. When you contribute to your RSPs, it brings down your taxable income. It triggers a tax refund in most cases. Most people use that tax refund, they recontribute to their RSP. So it sort of is a double benefit. That strategy is used for people that aren't yet ready yet to buy their home in most cases. You can contribute up to $60,000. And when you finally buy a home and you withdraw that $60,000, let's say the maximum from your RSPs, you have 15 years to pay it back. The 15 years works out to $4,000 a year on $60,000, for example. So if you're an employee who consistently gets tax refunds, you get a few $1,000s back every year. That's the way that you would recontribute to your RSPs. So we see this a lot with, say, hourly employees, for example, who earn lots of overtime. They over-contribute to their taxes. They're due a refund. When they withdraw from their RSPs, if they get $5,000 back at the end of the year, they just take that $5,000. They use that as their repayment into their RSPs. So again, that home buyer's plan is really, really, really advantageous. If you have RSPs and you're considering buying a home, there's very few reasons to not use them. You should absolutely be using RSPs. There's only about 3 opportunities in life to use your RSPs. One is if you're going back to school or going to school. The second is if you're buying a home. And of course, the third is when you're retired. So in that gap between, say, 25 and 65, let's trim it down to just 2 opportunities. If you're going back to school as a second career or adult, you can withdraw, or if you're buying a home. If you have RSPs and you're thinking about buying a home, you should absolutely be using them. It's up to $60,000.
Can I get the money in the afternoon if I wanted it?
In the afternoon.
Yeah. How long does it take?
Oh, to get the money from your RSP, so you should plan ahead. So you can't buy a home for 120 days following your last contribution. So if this is something that you want to take advantage of, it's definitely something that you want to plan for sure. Think of it 2 working people who are contributing $500 a month each to their RSPs, for example. If you don't plan ahead, there could be thousands of dollars left on the table because you leave this event, you go to an open house, and you fall in love, you decide to close in 30 days. The last 90 days of contributions, so it's 120 days, so you get 30 days out. The last 90 days of contributions from both yourself and your partner would not be eligible for withdrawal.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. The other thing I wanted to mention, just because we do see this very often, if you have an employer who will match your RRSP contributions, take advantage of that program. Have your employer help you buy your first house because honestly, why not? It's just a really easy way to like maximize your contributions there. With everything in the news right now, what's next for the housing market? Peggy, this one's for you. I want you to use your crystal ball.
Oh, okay. So we don't know. So with all this tariff talk, nobody knows how tariffs are going to affect us. We don't know if he is serious. We don't know. Like some things he wants 250% of tariffs on. It's just so stupid. But what I can tell you is that this spring, and believe me when I tell you, Bank of Canada, if we do get those tariffs, they will lower rates. So when the rates lower, and depending how this affects our unemployment, because people will buy homes when the rates are low. However, if they don't have a job, they can't do that. So it depends how our unemployment's going to fall out. But I suspect that you will get lower rates. And that's the beauty of this, because if you go out and you buy a house, I would be trying to close in 90 days right now, 60 to 90 days. I wouldn't want a 30-day closing. Like as long as you can push it out as far as you can, you will get lower rates by the end of that term. So they will match you, whatever the going rate is at that point.
Awesome. Thanks, Peggy. Okay, my family member is a handyman. Can they do my home inspection for me, Glenn?
Well, they could. But what an inspector is going to give you is a completely unbiased opinion, where I'm sure your uncle would love you, but might give you information that is not exactly as accurate as what we're going to get you.
And I think, Glenn, you guys do this day in and day out. It's not somebody who like repairs bathrooms doing an inspection for you. It's somebody who knows what to look for and what's wrong at a house, right? That's the value.
Exactly. We look at over 1,000 homes a year.
And as realtors, when we hear the dads doing the inspection, we're like, oh, shit. Here we go. Like, they're going to miss most of the stuff that matters. They're going to have a goddamn opinion about everything, and they're not going to look at the house properly. So hire an inspector, please.
Okay, Mark, what are typical legal fees when purchasing a property? Like, what would you say somebody needs to have on hand when they're closing on their first home?
Yeah, so for legal fees, as I broke it down, there's sort of three parts to it. There's the legal fees, there's the disbursements, and then there's the title insurance. So on the fees side of it, there are some factors that impact it. For usually the price range that most first-time homebuyers are looking at buying in, your fees are usually about $1,000 to $1,500. All right, the purchase price is up over $1 million. We'll talk because, as I mentioned, there's more risk, more insurance, so cost will go up. But usually about $1,000 to $1,500 in that range, depending on your lender and such. The disbursements are usually about the same. They're about $1,000 to $1,200, and then your title insurance is usually about $400 to $600. So for the legal side, opposing costs, I would ballpark about $2,500 to $3,000 for the most part for the fees and disbursements. Question I get.
Can you pay some of those fees with like Visa and stuff, or is it like
So yes and no, it depends.
Okay.
So any funds that I'm sending outside of my office, the purchase, and that needs to be certified funds.
Yeah.
So any funds that we take in that are uncertified, so I need a bank draft, a certified check, or a wire, I've got to hold it for at least 7 days. So if it's, my fees that I'm keeping in-house, yeah, no problem. I'll take a credit card on that. If it is, to cover the land transfer tax, no, because that's going to come out of my trust account rates to the government on the day of closing. And if it's not certified, then that money isn't available for that. So yes, the legal fees and stuff, yes, we can work that out. If it's funds that have to leave my office, like the purchase price, the land transfer tax, then unfortunately no, unless you happen to bring it in, well in advance. Keeping in mind that no lawyer in Ontario can take more than $7,500 in cash on any one transaction. So if you're paying your $10,000 in land transfer tax in cash, we can't do that. Yeah.
Mark, how much is land transfer tax? Because most of these people would be looking at like a $500,000 purchase price.
Right. So
And have you
you do some
seen,
math.
and can people put it on their mortgage, or do you have to come up with that money?
No, that has to that as far as I'm aware, that's not something that can be financed. I've never seen it on a mortgage. It does have to be available. You do get the $4,000 rebate, so you're sort of your sweet spot. If you're buying a property for $368,000 or less, then you're going to have no land transfer tax as a first-time home buyer, because that's where it equals up to $4,000 total for your land transfer tax. So you're looking at about 1.5% of the 368 to 500. So
I got it here if you want it.
you got it, yeah.
Or using my handy mortgage one.
Excellent. Got it right up here. Mortgage one, see you later.
Which is coincidental because the bill's due for the renewal of my app, so I'm definitely paying. I'm going to renew it. $500,000, $6,475 in land transfer tax.
Is that with the rebate or with that?
If you're a first-time home buyer, it's just $2,475.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll give me a heart.
I also wanted to mention, just to sort of jump onto your comments as well, your closing costs can be borrowed. So let's say you're taking advantage of the Simcoe County Down Payment Assistance Program. All of that money is coming from the county. The 1.5% theoretically could be borrowed from an unsecured line of credit. You can put part of it on a credit card. You can pay it off over time. The only caveat is whatever you borrow on unsecured credit or credit cards or anything else has to be factored into your mortgage application. So if there's a $300 a month payment on those obligations, we have to factor that in. But it is quite common that we do see that for sure.
Thank you. So, is it difficult to get home insurance in Ontario, Shara?
Actually, no, it's not. We're actually very fortunate in Ontario that we have a lot of insurance companies out there. Unlike, for example, in Florida and California, where a lot of people just can't get home insurance just because of situations down there. I will say, though, that there may be some coverages that you can't get. So there are a lot of areas, specifically in the Windsor zone, where you can't get flood coverage at all. And there's even areas in and around our area that are prone to flooding where you wouldn't be able to get the flood coverage. And typically we can bind coverage on a home policy the day of, but I do never recommend that because there could be some things that come up. For example, leased land. If you are purchasing a property with leased land, we're going to want that copy of the contract for the leased land because typically they want to be listed on your policy. And we have to send that away to be looked at. So that's going to take 3 to 5 business days to be reviewed. We will do it. Eventually we'll come back. Unless there's something that's extraordinary in the contract, but corporate and legal has to look at that document. So never leave it to the last minute, but yes, it's very easy to get.
Awesome. Is renting cheaper than buying? I'm worried about affordability and maintenance costs. So the reason I put this on here is because we hear all the time, I'm renting because I don't want to have to worry about the cost of maintaining a home. Say there's a flood or say there's something else. Nick, do you want to talk to this?
Sure. Remember I was telling you about that sad story, like 2 working class individuals, great credit, and their only barrier to entry is the down payment. Fast forward that story 10 years. We see this all the time. So there's probably some people in the audience who have friends and you think to yourself, they make the same money as me. Like, why do they have a home? Why do they have cars? Why can they do more things than I do? And the reality is that they can use their home equity as a tool. They can lever that. So you can refinance, you can borrow against it, you can use that to invest, but most importantly, you can also use that equity in bad situations, to value out of bad situations. So remember I said, fast forward 10 years, if you show me 2 people who work full-time in their 50s, who have never owned a home, I could tell you that they've had some sort of financial tragedy in their life because they don't have that backup and that safety plan. People call me consistently, like, knock on wood, my spouse just lost their job. We have this health emergency. They have a nest egg. They have a safety net. We refinance, we give them the money they need, and there's just instant comfort in their life that sort of helps get them through this solution. The person that doesn't have the home equity to rely on, typically in times like that, it means really bad things, financial disaster, unfortunately. So the argument of like, should I just keep on renting? I don't have to worry about home maintenance and that sort of thing versus ownership. It helps from that point, right? Like there's the argument, like that home equity will always be available. People that say like, I won't have to worry about the maintenance. Well, you have the home equity to help you deal with maintenance. So when your mortgage comes up every 3 or 5 years, it's a great opportunity to tap into your equity, restructure your debt, take out cash, do your roof, do your, your furnace, like mechanicals, that sort of thing. There are ways that home ownership will be cheaper than rent. So I met with a nice couple. They're in this room. I'm going to look for like a different direction. We talked about buying a duplex. It was listed for $699,000. We thought, maybe mid six. It's been listed for a long time. We ran the numbers. The total monthly mortgage payment and property taxes was about $3,900. And we concluded that the apartment should generate about $1,900, which means that they're buying that home for $2,000 a month. It's an East End, fully detached home. That $2,000 a month is far less than the cost of renting it.
I also want to highlight that working with professionals will also help you kind of curb any of these unexpected costs that come along with home maintenance. So for example, if you get an agent who works in the area, they know what to expect in certain neighborhoods. Maybe that house was built on former swamp area. Maybe this area has issues with water damage in the basement. That's why you want to work with somebody who works in the area you're buying. They'll tell you everything you need to know about where the house is. And then working with somebody like Glenn who can foresee kind of what these expenses might look like so you can prepare for them accordingly. What are the first steps to getting pre-approval, Nick? I feel like I'm interrogating you right now.
It's all right. It's all right. yeah, I hate talking, as you can tell. So it all starts with a conversation. So if anybody has ever met with me in the office, the conversation is like, you think it's like, what's your date of birth? What's your social insurance number? How much do you make? That sort of thing. And we stop all that. The computers are closed. The TV screens are off. And we're like, tell us about you. And they're like, well, we're, Joe and Sam. And, we work full time. Like, great. Where do you work? What do you do? What's important to you? And then we start by saying things like, in a perfect world, how much would you, do you think you need to spend on a home to get everything that you want in life for you and your family and your spouse and everything else? And everyone chuckles. They go, like $1 million. And I'm like, no, but really. And they're like $600,000. Like if we had $600,000, we know we can carry $3,000 a month. And then we start asking questions like, would you have a tenant in the home? Yeah, I would never do that. It's like 50-50. Do you want a condo? No, we have a big dog. What about a townhome? Yeah, we would do a townhome. Like if it was on a good street. Okay, so good street, like quiet area and that sort of thing. You see, like we're starting with the end in mind. And really what we're doing is saying, okay, like I know they want a $600,000 home, but we don't have to factor in for condo fees. I probably have to talk about $3,000 a year in taxes. Where do you want to be? You want to be in Barrie? Will you go to Midland? Is it really out of the question? We start to narrow it all down. Then we get into the questions. I already know their names. I know what they do for a living. I put in $600,000. I know that they have a minimum down payment. Let me ask more about you. Okay, like where do you work? What do you do? Do you have some overtime? Yeah, and then we get into all those questions. By the end of it, it's a story that leads to a pre-approval. The very last question that we typically ask is like, what's your date of birth and your social insurance number? We do the credit check right on the spot. Within about 20 or 30 minutes, somebody leaves with an exact knowledge of what they qualify for or what the barriers to entry are, period. If you don't leave a mortgage pre-approval appointment with an exact number in your head, I can go shopping for this, or these are the barriers to entry for me, you're in the wrong meeting for sure. That meeting should take 30 to 60 minutes. It's very quick. It's not abrasive. It's not intrusive whatsoever. You should know at the end of that meeting exactly where you stand. Once you're pre-approved, please find somebody that you know and you trust. Like I walked in the room before many of you. All of these people have become my friends. They're my clients. They hug me. They tell me about the market. I was on the phone with one of your agents this week, and I said, this client just got pre-approved, and here's the numbers that we talked about at the meeting, and they found this property, and it's on X Street, and she went, ew, no. I'm like, great, tell them that. Like they're really real people that are not just going to sell you a home. I always say, like, I collect their tax returns. I know their date of birth. I've seen their credit report. The people at the back of the room know way more about you than I do because they spend days in a car. You know their child's name. You know everything about them. You know the stories. I know the technical aspects, but it just extends beyond the pre-approval. Like find somebody that you know and you like. You're going to have an opportunity to go to open houses and meet some of these people. Just align yourself with people that you want to work with.
And especially for people who are sitting out here right now, and there's no chance that this is the road for you. what you need to do is waste his time. You need to go in and talk to him, or he can do it over Zoom, he can do whatever, but you need a roadmap of how you're going to get there, because you need to start somewhere, and we don't care. Like, you can come and talk to us, we'll show you a house, like, that's no problem. But you need to know how to get to where you're going. And if today's not the day that you can get there, it doesn't matter, but you still need a plan. And we don't mind. Like, let Nick help you build a plan of how to get to where you want to go.
I know you did elaborate on this bit, Mark, already, but what is title insurance and do I need it?
The short answer to the second part is yes. So you've heard about a number of insurance policies here today. You got mortgage insurance, life insurance, house insurance, title insurance. But realistically, if you're about to borrow 5, 6, 7 times your annual salary and it's all secured against one asset, you want to make sure that asset is covered if things come up. So we'll start off with what title insurance isn't. It's not home insurance. It doesn't cover the structure, doesn't cover the building. Home insurance will be a requirement of your lender to make sure that if the property burned down, there's money there to cover it, either to rebuild it or to pay off the mortgage and you got your vacant land. Title insurance is another requirement of the lender. Came into Ontario in about 2004, and it covers title-related issues that weren't discoverable by your lawyer prior to closing. So when I get an agreement of purchase and sale, I'm going to do a title search on the property. I'm going to look at the whole history of the property in the land title system, see who currently owns it, what mortgages are on it, what easements are on it, is there a utility line running through. It'll give me a good idea of the history and the current status of the property in that regard. There could be a number of things that can impact your title, your ownership of the property, your ability to sell title to the property to someone else that we can't see, we can't discover on those. But prior to 2004, lawyers would do what we would call off-title searches and check all of these things. Now, those off-title searches add up, cost money, 95% of the time yielded no issues, but still wouldn't necessarily find everything. So those would be things like property tax arrears, unclosed work permits, encroachment issues. So you're buying from somebody who's owned the property for a year, but the city has never, given them arrears notice or told them or told us that, hey, 3 years ago taxes weren't paid. And all of a sudden the tax lien gets registered on the property for $4,000. The city is going after the property, not the previous owner, because that is what is attached to. Well, now it becomes your problem as the current owner. Title insurance steps in, says, yeah, that wasn't your fault. This wasn't disclosed prior to closing. They'll pay it out, and they'll go sue the previous owner to try to recover what they've paid out. Property tax arrears is the most common claim that title insurance companies get, but it's not the biggest dollar value claim that they get. There could be unclosed work permits, work done without a permit that you discover after the fact, and the city comes to you and says, this deck is not allowed, or this addition, there's an open work permit, we haven't approved it, and the inspection shows there's $10,000 worth of electrical work that needs to be done to bring this up to code. Again, you need to know about it. It wasn't disclosed to you. There are some exceptions. If you're buying the property in as-is condition, every story, you've agreed to take on these. If you are buying a property in the city of Sudbury, have a discussion. Give me a call, because different issues there. They don't cover a lot of permitting issues simply because of the history of homeowners doing a ton of work over the years without permits in that city. Encroachment issues. 10 years after you own it, you find out that the old garage at the back of the property goes 3 feet over the neighbor's lot line. Well, that's an issue, and it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars to remedy it. Title insurance would step in and cover you. And it does cover potential future issues that never could have been discovered. Somebody in the future, 20 years from now, registers a fraudulent mortgage against your property or fraudulently sells your property to someone else. Title insurance will step in and cover you. For about $400 to $600 up front, it's a one-time premium that covers you for as long as you own the property. It's not an annual cost, and it'll cover you basically in perpetuity. Technically, there are 2 title insurance policies at the time of purchase. There's the owner's policy, which covers the things that I've discussed. That would cover you for as long as you own the property. And then there is a lender's policy. Most lenders will just eat the cost of that, and it'll be in mortgage. Some of them will make you pay for it. It's usually less than the owner's policy, unless you're dealing with a private lender. But it could be, $300, $400. And what that policy does is it covers the lender in the case that the mortgage that was registered turns out to be fraudulent or unenforceable. Basically, it's their protection against you in case you were defrauding the lender, and they make you pay for that. So that's the basics of title insurance. If you buy a property and discover something after the fact and think it might be a title related issue, you're going to want to call a lawyer to close the transaction and initiate a title insurance claim.
Okay, I have a question. Yes. Is there a maximum amount of what they cover?
So again, it is somewhat subjective. For the most part, no, as long as the claim is valid and justified. So I mentioned Sudbury. They've tried a whole bunch of things in the city of Sudbury to stop eating on their payouts. One thing they tried was charging twice as much for the premium. Another thing they did try was capping permit issues in Sudbury at $40,000 for the lifetime of the policy. At this point in time right now, title insurance companies don't cover permit-related issues in the city of Sudbury because it's just too costly for them. Yeah. For the most part, no, there isn't necessarily a cap. Most of the ones they get are $2,000 for unpaid property taxes. But yeah, they could get a $50,000, your shed goes 3 feet over the property line of your neighbor. Title insurance is going to step in. They're going to go for their reactive, not proactive, and they're going to go for the most cost-effective option, which might be buying that strip of land or whatever the case may be. So they will look for the path of least resistance for them, but for the most part, not necessarily a cap. Yeah.
Okay, great. So now we're in our segment of questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions that they feel haven't been answered and they'd like to ask any of our experts up here? Yeah, we got a couple.
Yeah, I have a question for Ned. Yeah. Just on kind of like your triangle 3 pillars there.
Yeah.
If someone does have the 3-pillar 3-point,
Yeah.
but they're still have their parents want to like help out.
Yeah.
What's the difference between like a cosign and a down payment in that section?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question was the mortgage triangle, and if somebody has all 3 parts, so income, credit, and down payment, parents still want to help. How do they do that? So they would help by making housing more affordable, in my opinion. So you probably don't need a cosigner. So, well, they'd help in one of 2 options. Let's say you have all 3, okay, but you can't quite get to the purchase price that you want. Maybe you want, you qualify for 600,000, and you want to buy for 7, and the bank won't let you use the rental revenue from like 2 bedrooms because that's not a thing in our business. You can get insurance for it, but the bank won't let you use the rent from 2 bedrooms, for example. So to get to that $700,000 mark, maybe your parents cosign, get you up a little bit, for example. The other thing is banks will rarely use rental income from a non-legal apartment. So a lot of apartments in Barrie are still non-legal, for example, and they're more like in-law. So think like extended family, for example. So parents might co-sign to help get you up in purchase price. Now, if you qualify for the purchase price that you have in mind and you just want to make it more affordable, we see a ton of parents giving like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for additional down payments to help bring the payment down and just make the home ultimately more affordable as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Steph?
Yeah, so I had a question for Nick as well. I know you mentioned saying like if you locked in on a 5-year variable rate, but then the rates go down and I want to lock in. Can I just do that at any point throughout that 5 years? Are there fees to do that? Like, what does that
That's a really great question. So the question was about if she gives a 5-year variable rate and she wants to lock in later, can she do that at any point? Is there a cost? Can they do it on their own? That sort of thing. So lender selection from the start is very important. Like you're definitely asking the right questions, and a good broker will ask those questions to your lender. So I have a client who wants to take a 5-year variable. They want to ride the market down. They want the benefits of those decreasing interest rates, but their expectation is that they will lock into a fixed rate down the road. You definitely want to ask those questions off the bat. So we always joke in our business, those like, Scotiabank's giving away a free iPad, for example, if you open a bank account. New customers only, like not the guy that's been there for 20 years, giving them a monthly fee for the last 20 years, right? The same is true in that sort of scenario as well. So a lot of banks, once they already have a consumer, will convert to not the lowest rates, but somewhere in between. So if we know that a borrower's agenda is to take the variable and then lock in later, we'll build that into part of the plan. For example, if you take a 5-year variable and you want to lock in, you can only lock into a term that's longer than what's remaining on your variable rate. So you take a 5-year variable rate from the onset, and you remember we had this conversation, and a 3-year is a great option because it provides flexibility. It's also a lower rate now. Well, you take the 5-year variable, nobody tells you any different. A year goes by, you see all these incredibly low fixed rates, and you want to lock into the 3-year, you can't. You can only lock into a 4-year or 5-year, 7-year, 10-year, anything that's longer than what's remaining. So if you're going to take the variable and the strategy was to lock into the 3-year fixed later, then we take a 3-year variable, specifically a 3-year variable, because then once 1 year goes by, you can lock into a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year. So it's about asking those questions up front. So really, really great question. Thank you.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
Thoughts on other third-party purchase helpers like lease-to-own, rent-to-own, shared equity?
I'll answer those. There's a shared equity lender that's just emerged in Ontario. We've used them once now. You have to have 5% available. Their mandate is if you have 5%, they'll talk up to 20%, which makes it more affordable. You avoid CMHC. You can get a longer amortization, brings the payment way down. You take 50% of home equity. So you're a 50% partner in the home. I don't love it for that reason, but where it specifically is helpful, it is if somebody is missing one or more of those pillars on the mortgage triangle and they need 20% down so they don't qualify for CMHC insurance, then that's a great program. Helps get you into home ownership and you move sort of down the conveyor belt. So that is great. Similarly, there's sort of like a private option to that. So if you have a friend that wants to invest in a home with you for a portion of the equity, you have a proper contract and that sort of thing drawn up, that's where that how you hold title is very important. So the friend comes in for, say, 20% of the equity or 30% of the equity. You work with a great lawyer, you come up with a great contract, you have basically a money partner for your purchase. Happens every day. The third is that rent to own. So rent to owns are really great. They can work very, very well. If you're working with a company that does rent to owns, if you search rent to own on Kijiji, you'll find 300 people that think they know how to do a rent to own. And really what they're after is profit. So there's companies that specifically do rent to owns. There's actually local people in this community that have written books and they run companies and they're they're really, really, really great, legitimate people that will structure rent to own for you. The challenge with rent to own, as we know, is the rent to own investor wants appreciation on the home. And that's a question mark right now. So they're less popular over the last 3 years, probably for that reason. But there are definitely lots of options. I think the order of operations is see if you qualify for the Simcoe County First Down Payment Assistance Grant. Then go to a shared equity sort of situation. Is there a money partner around in your life, parents, friends, relatives, that sort of thing? And then the third would be a potential rent-to-own program.
But at the end of the day, whatever it has to be, it has to be. And whether you get 50% of that equity, it's better than zero. So, but just make sure you do your homework, ask around, get a second opinion of whatever company you're going to use, Google them. Ask other people. There are legit people in the business, but there's also not so legit people. But again, we are here on a Sunday. You ever try to talk to a lawyer on a Sunday? Good luck. Not even kidding. Sharon, is your office even open? No. Nick's office isn't open. We work 24/7, so we suck. We're always available, but what I want to tell you is that we're here out of the spirit of contribution. We're trying to help. We don't have to be here. We want to be here. I don't care if you buy a house. I do care that you may not have known how to. And that's why we're here. So if you need help, guidance, Realtor, they're back there. Nick's here. Please email your questions to us. We are more than happy to sit down and have a conversation. Like I said, I don't care if you ever buy a house, but I do care that you know how to do it.
Awesome. And just to keep things moving along, because we do have some great open houses for you guys to visit as well, we do have everybody's contact information on the back of this sheet. And I'm sure that everybody will be here for a few minutes afterwards. If you have any other questions, I encourage you to come up, have a chat with them, ask any other questions that you might have.